Caesar!
Your servant.
Your creature. Your animal. But I saw you die.
The king is dead.
Long live the king!
Tell me, Breck, before you die, how do we differ from the dogs and cats you and your kind used to love? Why did you turn us from pets into slaves?
Because your kind were once our ancestors. Man was born of the ape. And there's still an ape curled up inside of every man. The beast that must be whipped into submission. The savage has to be shackled in chains. You are that beast, Caesar. You taint us. You poison our guts. When we hate you, we're hating the dark side of ourselves.
Hey there, Adrenalheads. My name is Jerry.
And I'm Mark.
Welcome to Adrenaline Cinema. Hey, I'm back. How long has it been, Mark? It's been a minute.
About a year.
Yeah, year and a half, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
On today's show, we are going to continue going bananas with the next in the line of the Planet of the Apes series with Conquest of the Planet of the Apes from 1972.
Yeah.
Mark, would you like to give us a synopsis?
Sure. So, in this third sequel to Planet of the apes turn the tables on the humans' Earth population when they lead a revolt against their cruel masters in the distant year of 1991. By doing this, it creates the time loop that leads to the first film. Conquest of Planet of the Apes is cinematically etched in broad, brash strokes, slashing social satire and science fiction suspense with large-scale spectacle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think after the first one, this is probably my favorite in the series.
Very much. I actually, that was something I wanted to bring up. Literally, I have a top 4, and this ranks number 2. The first one being the original.
Mm-hmm.
So this actually holds true. And oddly enough, the movie came out the birth year of my. It came out the year of my birth. So it came out in, I believe, June of 1972.
Correct. Yeah.
June 30th. And I was born August 24th of 1972. So it's like a couple of months since that. But there's a lot with this movie that I do enjoy. And a lot of it is, and it is technically a social commentary of everything that was going on at that time that still continues to go on to this day in multiple countries, even within America itself, too, by the way.
Yeah. And yeah, I was about a year and a half when this came out.
Shows you're our ages, everybody.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because both of us being in our 50s.
Yeah.
Because I remember it's like, when they say the futuristic year of 1991, and I was like, really?
Exactly. I remember seeing this in continuous watches from the late 70s. I would say between the ages of 7 to about like 11 or 12 on regular syndicated TV. And if there was an Apes movie on, they always had the Apes weekend. I would always watch it, but this would be the one I would always watch. And I remember poignantly, it's like we would have Sunday evening dinner, and my father would have the TV, of all things, in the dining room area. We have a small TV, black and white. It'd be playing. My mother at that point said, "No, we can't have TV," but we would actually have it playing, and that would be on, and we'd watch that. That and Robinson Crusoe Goes to Mars. Yeah, it was weird movies like that that would show up in the Sunday early evening that would be during the day, and they would have a marathon on UPN, Channel 9 in New Jersey, New York, or Channel 11. But this would be one of those movies, and it still strikes a key in my head because of the social commentary in it. It just rung through in my head. Because it taps along the idea of slavery, everything else that was going on. And then there is something that is a poignant scene that we'll get into later on regarding slavery. And it's pointed to a black person at this point. So, it's one of those movies that I always really enjoyed, but more for the political and social commentary within it.
Yeah. And for me, it was one of those cases of where, like on the Saturday afternoon science fiction, movie duo, that's when we weren't working, of course. So because I remember when I turned 13, I think it was, to say, hey, time to help in the family business.
Exactly right. I was like that too.
Yeah, because that's when I could start lifting cases of soda and other things.
Same here.
Well, I could do it before, but they just, but they were glass at the time, so they were kind of heavy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Back in
the returnable bottle era.
Yeah. Well, still is cans, bottles, whatever. And back then, too, people, 2-liter bottles were bottles, glass bottles, not
the plastic ones yet. Yeah.
See, Jerry knows.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so getting to people we may know in the film. Go ahead with first.
The first we all know, Roddy McDowell, but in this case, in this particular movie, he plays Caesar. He has a whopping 271 credits to his name. Everybody, we'll give you a brief idea. All the other Planet of the Apes movies, as Jerry points out here in the doc, Fright Night 2, Class of 1984, The Black Hole, which was an uncredited voice of one of the robots, and The Poseidon Adventure, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and That Darn Cat. And he had lots of TV as well. Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Planet of the Apes TV series as well. Mission Impossible, Twilight Zone. His most famous episode would be People Are Alike All Over.
Yeah. And on Fantasy Island, of course, he co-starred with our next person, Ricardo Montalban, as Armando, who's in Escape from Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, that's one of his most famous roles, of course. Yeah. But you know how Hollywood is always kind of hesitant to hire ex-cons. So, sorry, I had to repeat the joke. I'm so sorry. We got The Naked Gun and various numbers of TV roles, but I want to point out the most famous one, Fantasy Island. That's probably one of his best-known roles.
The plane.
Yes, and then various other stuff like Gunsmoke, Wonder Woman, Dynasty, of the spin-off The Colbys, Spy Kids, but just a whole bunch of stuff. And a lot of actors that were in movies in the 70s in their past TV roles did a lot of westerns and various other TV shows.
And Ricardo Montalban, as I recall, he's from Colombia, wasn't he?
I don't remember.
Okay. It's so funny too, because I remember it's like, oh, wow. No, he's from, he was born in Mexico City, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Good to know. Anyhow, but he was a staple in our childhood. Mm-hmm. As we, you and I both know, because of Fantasy Island and all those shows, mm-hmm. these movies and everything else. But everybody knows his accent, and he is such a favored actor. All right, we'll move on next on to Don Murray as Governor Breck. We could see him in movies like Endless Love, Bus Stop, TV shows like The Outcasts, and Knots Landing.
Yeah, he didn't have quite the depth of on his filmography like Roddy McDowall did.
Nah.
No, not a whole lot. So next we have Natalie Trendy as Lisa. She was in all of the other Apes films except the first, for the reason she was married to one of the producers. I think, wasn't it Jacobs she was married to?
I think so.
Yeah. Other movies are The Careless Years, Studio One, Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation, and again, in TV, we have Bonanza, The Asphalt Jungle, and The Dakotas. Again, Bonanza shows up. How many? Like Bonanza, Gunsmoke?
It was the consistent thing within the 60s and the 70s at that point. So everybody was a continuous regular within the studio as far as what they were contracted to. So they would do movies and shows. So that was a weird staple during that time within film and TV. All right. Well, next up would be Harry Rhodes as McDonald. And movies we've seen him in, probably The Satan Bug, which I have to really look into that because I'm interested in that idea. Taffy and the Jungle Hunter, Mirage, Blindfold, and within TV, you could probably see him in Have Gun Will Travel, The $6 Million Man, which I do recognize him from, Peyton Place, Wagon Train. Wow, that's an older one. The Outer Limits, and of course, The Fugitive.
Yeah, I haven't watched the whole of The Outer Limits, but I've watched like about maybe a dozen episodes, and I really like that show.
The Outer Limits was very unique for its time. I believe it came in the late 60s, early 70s?
Early 60s.
It was early 60s. Okay.
Yeah, if I remember right. So don't quote me on that.
All right. Well,
I remember. But I do remember the what I call the ex-convict bugs. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yes.
Those were so creepy.
Yes, it is. Awesome.
Okay. Next we have Severin Darden as Culp. He was in Back to School. I remember him in that one. Real Genius. Saturday the 14th and Mother Jugs and Speed. Vaguely remember him from that. TV. I Dream of Jeannie, Cheers, and The Fall Guy.
Huh. Interesting.
Probably one of the villains of the week.
Probably. Usually that's what happens with older actors. After a certain point, they kind of fade out and then they age and they have to go into those roles. One of which was the Man of Uncle himself. And when Robert actually moved into those characters, it was pretty interesting. And I got to talk to him personally about that, which was so fun. Cool. Next up would be Lou Wagner as Busboy.
Yeah, we only saw him in a couple scenes, but I thought I'd mention him. So.
All right. So he played in Planet of the Apes, Lucius, as we all remember. If you guys can remember Lucius. Beards. Chicanery is another movie. And then on TV appearances, Star Trek DS9 and The Next Generation. The Golden Girls, Hunter, if you'll remember that, and Chips.
Yeah, I do remember Hunter vaguely.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't even remember Hunter.
Yeah, it was. It had the like an ex Falcons football player named Fred Dreyer, and I forget the actress's name.
Yeah, the female.
Yeah, I should know that name if I'm going to make reference to it.
It's fine.
And every 70s kid knows Chips. So.
Yes, we all do. Ponch and John.
Yeah, and finally, we have John Randolph as the commission chairman, famously in You've Got Mail as the Grandpa Fox guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and I do remember that one. And then Serpico, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, Pritzi's Honor, Heaven Can Wait, King Kong, and Earthquake in Sense Around. Of course, I always have to mention Sense Around when I mention Earthquake. And I did not get to see it in theaters, so I was way too young to see it in theaters.
Yeah.
And oh, gee, look, hey, in TV, he was also in Bonanza. Big surprise. Matlock, T.J. Hooker, Macmillan and Wife, and finally Kojak.
Awesome. Yeah, that kind of rounds out our cast. It's a very small, minimalistic cast.
Tons of extras.
Tons of extras. A lot of people faces that we do know, but obviously we don't want to go too far in depth with that. But if you guys have any thoughts about the movie, you all know how to contact us and let us know, hey, these are our thoughts about this. So we'll get that at the very end of the podcast, as always. But please submit any thoughts that you have on the movie. And hey, I saw that person and they were in this movie. Let us know. All right.
Okay. So moving on to general thoughts. Mark, what are your general thoughts on this one?
Overall general thoughts reflective of past and present now. Even as a child watching this, I knew it was a social commentary of what was going on within our history when it came to slavery and how we treated people who were different and how they were. And also, it's a premonition of what was to come in our society in some ways of how we treat people modern day. And lo and behold, this artistic take did not really take to the point where people really understood it. Here we are to this day, still struggling with these issues. And it does make a stance, and it's all about freedoms, everybody. It's all about being equal, whether you're a servant or non-servant or whatnot. Honestly, there shouldn't be any servants. It should be us taking care of one another. And this is a stance in a sense of, okay, these are apes that are like smart and are, treated like slaves, and they retaliate. It's kind of that art imitates life, but in a sense that it was meant in a way that you could actually take it where it is fictitious, but there is a reality within it. So I understood that as a kid when I watched this, when I was watching it on TV, and I knew, and it's so sad, but yeah, it's got a heavy allegory of racism and the whole resolution of why people do what they do and giving them their freedoms. And yeah, I highly recommend it to anybody. This is something that they should show in school, but as a form of a commentary so that they can understand and associate with, and then use that as an association. But that's my thought. I'm not an educator in any way, but it's a good way to actually educate.
Yeah, and you would have to be familiar with the history of the time, coming out of the civil rights movement,
Correct.
Heavily in the '60s.
Mm-hmm.
And I find this, again, still it's very politically charged. And
Yes.
it's not a perfect film.
No.
But by any means, but because I think the filmmakers had to deal with a lot of restrictions on that. But it's definitely the best movie since the first one. And this shows how a huge firestorm of like revolution can be set off by a single spark. And we will mention that. We'll mention that when it comes to pass here. And easily this is Roddy McDowall's best performance.
Yes, I do agree with that. This along with the first movie, for the fact that he was sold to play these particular characters. Caesar was not Cornelius at this point. He is where literally we are taking off where we left off with the last movie, and he plays his own son.
Yeah.
And Armand, and we literally go 20 years later at this point. and Armand brings him up almost as kin, as family, and teaches him. But the one thing and cool thing I liked about this introduction was within the first few scenes, we see where the world has come. We lost all pets, but they found some way to utilize all these apes, and they realized, okay, they can be educated to do menial working jobs, literally enslaving them to do something and conditioning. Very similar to how slavery was done back in, like, she's going 1600s on forever.
Forever.
And but the thing is that with that, in that case, it was human on human. In this case, it's human on ape. And we are it's a cycle of destruction in a sense, because it literally showcases what has happened and why humankind was destroyed and why ape kind has taken over. And it's kind of like a subtle commentary of saying that you can't change everything, you can't control is an illusion, and you should treat everybody equally, whether they be human, ape, or not. It's like, in this case, it's ape or human. They have an ability. But I like how it shoves, like, 19 years later, technically, if you look at it, the actual year. This movie came out in 1972. It takes place in 1991. And obviously, we all remember 1991. That did not happen. And I love how Armando guides Caesar through and educate us and gives us those narratives of explaining to Caesar how everything happened and why he has to subject Caesar to this, because he has to give up his rights to him, even though he was part of the circus, and now he has to be put into this world like this as a technically a slave, but in this case, a worker. And you see it through Caesar's eyes, and he sees all his fellow chimps and apes and everybody else being conditioned in a certain way as Armando's giving this information to him. And it's so sad because you could see it, and he's crying, and Armando is constantly telling him, hey, you can't talk. You're not supposed to.
You can't reveal yourself. Yeah.
You can't reveal yourself. But in the end, we do. And obviously, spoilers, everybody. This is a spoiler-full podcast because the movie is how old now? 53 years old?
Yeah. It's time to spoil it.
It's time to spoil it. Basically, we get that whole revolutionary, and Caesar's able to teach out to these apes how to become, and he's able to communicate with them because they have these intelligences of what we see as the apes progress later on. Very similar to what Pierre Boulle had put in his short story.
Yeah. The original novel you're talking about?
Correct.
The original? Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move on to our favorite scenes in the movie. And some of that we lightly referred to.
Yeah.
But we have the opening with the showing the training of the simians, all the chimps and the gorillas. Oddly enough, did we see? I don't remember seeing any orangutans.
We do get to see orangutans later on when Caesar is he puts himself in a cage with a bunch of them.
Oh, those. Okay, yeah.
They're going to Indonesia.
Yeah, but not the.
Not in the very beginning.
Not in the very beginning. Okay.
Neither gorillas either. By the way,
they're all chimps.
They're all chimps. For the most part, they see the chimps as a more of a hierarchy and easier to control. They're closer to human, and if you look at paleontology and everything else and studies, they say that chimps are closer to humans than any other ape.
Like 3 or 4% different, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But don't mate with an ape. Trust me, you don't want to. Not for me. I've never done that. I've only heard it, and I heard some weird
so
stuff.
Been told. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been told.
So I've been told something that the Nazis had tried to do, which is actually documented. Everybody.
Okay. Okay, yeah, but that one, it just shows show them doing the menial tasks like pouring water, sweeping, doing other tasks like that. So
yeah, menial tasks are pretty much just like maid service and things of that nature, catering, lighting a cigarette, things like little things here and there, and then they're being disciplined based on that as they're being trained. Kind of like how you would train a dog or any other, and they don't think of them as being intelligent, which is really sad because they are intelligent beings
in their own way.
And yes, they are.
Yeah. Because if I heard it put like, if you were 1% smarter as on the whole as a species, if you gained 1% per generation, a few generations hence, you could do a lot. You could achieve a lot. So.
Yeah, well, we only use how much of our brain, literally.
I think we use all of it, but as far as like, but as far as like we've progressed from the first powered flight being 1905, something like that. About 120 years ago.
Are you talking about the Wright brothers?
Yeah, talking about the Wright brothers. Yeah, first powered flight.
Okay.
In that to now, we've gone away. We've gone a ways in just like about 5 generations.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Okay. So next up, go ahead, Mark. Take the next one.
Well, honestly, what I did truly love about the movie was, it was basically Armando and Caesar's relationship overall. You cannot get past that. You could see the love and trust within both of them with each other. But at certain point, they grill Armando about the chimp that he brings in. And they're grilling him. And they talk about, of all things, Cornelius and Zira, and how he knows, because he kind of got outed by Caesar himself in the crowd when he states, what was it?
Filthy human bastard.
Filthy human bastard. Yeah. And then Armando says, "Oh, it's me. It was my voice. It wasn't him." And literally he gets pulled aside and they interrogate him and they go forth. And then, of course, within that time, Caesar gets put into the system and they don't realize who they have at that point. But the thing is it gets to that point where, they pressure Armando to that point where he winds up jumping out of a window. I don't know if it was jumping or being pushed out of the window. It's so weird.
It's 6 of 1 for me. 6 of 1, half dozen.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the fact is that he died.
He did die, and that's what pushes Caesar over the edge, which I found very endearing, for the fact that it was the one person that he loved and cared for, that believed in him, loved him for who he was and who they were, and not because they were chimp, human, or whatever, just as a being.
Yeah.
And that's what really matters. And that was the whole point within the association with these two. Because Armando, I always looked as Caesar's uncle that brought him up since, we lost Cornelius and Zira, and that's the only families that Caesar knew. And I love the aspect that, there's a point in the movie where Caesar picks his name, and it's King.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in that interrogation, they show a tape about, I think it's I forget who it is on the screen, but they're talking about Cornelius Cornelius and Zira, and how they should be controlled and be made sterile, because 2,000 years hence, this is what happens based on their testimony.
Correct.
Or forced testimony, I should say.
Yes. But we all see within the movie how these apes are able to learn and are able to eventually talk at certain points. They have the intelligence. And this is through Caesar's tutelage over the years. So they're able to become what Cornelius and Zira were eventually. And this becomes what our destiny is, that we got to see at the very end
it's
of the original Apes movie.
Yeah, it's kind of like this whole time paradox. It's like, well, if how did they do that when they weren't around in the first place?
Correct.
Don't know. I'm not going to call it a plot hole. It's just kind of a little bit of a paradox to say, well, if you're, it's kind of like, was the whole thing about like killing your own grandfather accidentally? It's like, if you kill your own grandfather in an accident, how are you going to be born? Okay. So next one is we have ape management, where this is where Caesar infiltrates the shipment of the other chimps.
Yes.
And it shows some of the more inhumane treatment in their attempts to train, like serving drinks in a disco, or dance club at the time, and also have a flamethrower. And it's like, why do you need a flamethrower?
Well, oh my God. They have those desserts that you could actually put a flame to and bring and cook it. And
the flambés,
the flambés. And then you got the chimp who freaks out over the flame because it got too big, and he freaks out at that point too. And then everybody is. I think of this as like almost like Fight Club without Fight Club. This is them being trained like Fight Club, and they are just not catching on to it. But Caesar is catching on to everything, because by the time he gets tested later on, being sequestered in the office, he achieves everything except for one little thing, which was interesting because he purposely dodged that bullet.
Plays dumb on it.
Plays dumb on it. It was him serving the drink with the seltzer and everything. As soon as the seltzer hits, it's like, oh, yes. I made a mistake. That's it. But it was perfectly calculated by Caesar to do that, and that was in front of McDonald. And this is where we get a pretty much a social commentary based on what is stated. I have it in my notes, and these are my notes stating Mr. McDonald was treated like a slave as well. And there are some parallels. Caesar telling him that he understands him as McDonald was told to find Caesar, even though he was with Caesar all along. Then Caesar tells him his plan, and this is like in the caves at that point, and trying to reason with McDonald at this point. Very much a poignant point in the film regarding revolution and freedom and making history. But there's that whole slavery conversation within the office itself. But I'm forgetting who actually started it. It's your typical egotistical white person that just stands there and just judges, very businesslike. But it's him talking to a black man regarding this. And I'm like, whoa. Now I'm older and I'm looking at it with 50-year-old eyes, 50-year, somewhat old years eyes. And I'm like, wow, this is like right in your face. And this was 1972.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
So you got to watch it, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. And that was when, Caesar, this is when Caesar was still playing dumb when he was listening to this conversation. And they were talking, I think McDonald said something like, they're just, something about them not wanting to impart intelligence or any kind of skill to slaves. It was something along those lines. I can't remember the exact.
Yeah, I actually have my additional notes. It's the
Mhm.
talk about conditioning to slaves in front of McDonald
Mhm.
when they have Caesar do the drink mix in the office. Basically, I just have it as a nod to our past about slaves were treated within the United States, and that's literally what it is. It's more of like conditioning them and then telling them who is in charge. And oh my God, it's like back then. It's 72 and they have rights at this point. We've gone beyond that, but it has to take place in a movie that is fictitious to throw it in your face. It's like, hey, hello.
Yeah, it's a reflection of that with a little bit of oomph on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one I have, we have Caesar's reaction to Armando's death, and this is taken without any kind of
Oh,
dialogue. And when he hears about this
yeah.
in the control center, he walks out, and he walks out into this courtyard, sees one of the flyers that they were putting up for the circus,
Mm-hmm.
and he just does like he starts crying, and he does that one like a little bit of a chuffing,
Yes.
and then does this and then
Yeah.
does the scream, and it's like that was I mean
The bellowing scream
yeah
that he does is synonymous with anybody who grieves
Mhm.
for a loved one, and it's very hard to watch. And me, I took that. It's just like because they literally just dispatched Armando like he was nobody,
Mhm.
and it wasn't just anybody to Caesar, and it's a loved one. It's a person, a being that he loved.
Mhm.
Somebody who respected him, brought him up, family, and
Yes.
that's what is so impactful on that scene itself. Kudos to our lovely friend out there, and how they are. Roddy McDowell knows how to convey and can, he was doing that since he was a kid.
Yeah, and you felt it for him too, because it's like it's the only person he's ever known, and it just got ripped away from him.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the last person that he
Mhm.
had. Now all he has are the people that are around him, which are the apes that are fellowly enslaved with him. And he has to make them his family
Mhm.
and give them the feeling of we have to have a right to a life. We have to have our own independence. A revolution, as it were, everybody, because
Yes.
that's what this is.
Mhm. Okay. Next one I have, I think we already touched on this, was Caesar's revelation to McDonald to who he is. It's like I understand, and I'm the one they're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, holy crap, it's like under our nose the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, the capture of Caesar itself was torture just to watch him being
Mhm.
tortured at that point. It was a tough watch for me, being electrocuted to the point where he had to talk and saying
Mhm.
and screaming out, have pity, pleading them to have pity on him, and they continued to torture him, and then McDonald coming to his aid and
Yeah, and
stopping it.
shutting off the power. So,
Yep. But Caesar playing dead
mhm.
after McDonald stops the electricity at that point and faking it, and then Caesar taking his stance and escaping, and to lead his ape army to free
Mhm.
themselves at that point.
Yeah. And then we have after Caesar escapes the capture, and well, death, quote unquote, going back and getting all the weapons that they were collecting during. There's some scenes in the movie where they're like causing minor disruptions, before all this happens. Going back and collecting all the weapons and collecting his army,
Mm-hmm.
all the gasoline and kerosene that they were doing that through requests, in the errands of the apes. And after they do an attack on was at the control center, using welding, like using cutting torches to get through the doors.
Yeah.
And the governor's like, they can't do that. And I was like, well, apparently they can.
They learned how to do it. You showed them. Well, there was that one scene where you see Caesar showing them and he takes out the welding torch and they all freak out. And he's like,
Yes, exactly. This is how you do it. And then Caesar's revelation to the governor is like, oh, hey, I'm still alive.
Mm.
And it's like, yeah. Because governor thought he was in the clear, but apparently not. So.
He's not untouchable.
Yeah, so I like those two revelations. It's like they finally get to see a chimpanzee talk, and they're stunned by the whole thing.
Yeah, mind you, they've already seen this before with Caesar and Zira.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Cornelius and Zira, everybody. But even still, it's like, this is happening. This is the new world, and he does decree something.
Yep. And then we have last one I have here is Caesar's final speech and dialogue with McDonald after everything has happened. After this happens in the courtyard outside the building.
Correct.
So, and we'll get into the quotes in a few minutes here. So.
Yeah.
All right, and that was a very that's like the very last scene in the movie, and that's a very good some very good dialogue.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. It's very poignant. I don't know why this movie is not noted more in history based upon the relevance of American history itself in comparison. Honestly, they should be utilizing this within college.
At least in some kind of film class and or history.
Yeah.
To kind of mesh the two.
Exactly.
Let's move on to interesting facts and unknown facts about the movie. So, Mark, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll take the first one that you have here because I did not do all the homework, everybody. Mr. Jerry Gomez did. Anyhow, Ricardo Montalban, who plays Armando, and John Randolph, who played Commission Chairman, are the only actors to reprise their roles from Escape from the Planet of the Apes in 1971.
And it's odd that like they just came out one right after the other. Boom, boom. Like these were like,
they were cookie cutter at this point. They were putting out script after script and then coming up. And honestly, for them to be doing what they were doing at that time, from like the 60s all the way into the 70s, it was done very well in the early 70s. Later on with the Apes films, well, that's a different story all to itself.
Like one every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Next point is in overcoming their human oppressors during the climax of the film, Caesar and the other apes make extensive use of guerrilla warfare.
Another one of Jerry's punishment puns. Everybody.
Yes, and it is okay, and it is for obvious reasons the only film in the series to not receive a G rating.
Really? What was it? PG?
PG.
Okay.
Because it was violent.
Parental guidance was necessary at that time.
Yeah.
Nowadays, forget it.
Yeah. Now it's like, it'd probably be PG-13 these days. Yeah.
PG-13. Well, a majority of the newer Apes films that are out there too, and we had our most recent Apes movie within the past few years, right? So they are all mostly PG-13. They haven't hit the R rating, which actually came upon, of all things, on a YouTube. Remember the most recent Planet of the Apes movies where that came out? It's all mostly CG. We got the Scar gorilla, and he's acting drunk, and he does the thing with the gun, and he shoots them. That is something out of a rated R film, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and take the next one.
The next one, the script had opened with a fugitive ape being shot by the police. As they walked to it, the body would be revealed to be covered in open wounds and scars, showing the horrible living conditions of the slave apes. This was cut again for being too gruesome. Really? This is why this is the only film to not have an opening sequence as other films.
And that one they did make reference to when they were talking about the ape that was captured and shot the night before, and that was when they were not in the control room but in the governor's office.
Yes, it was
They did make
referencing
reference.
to a scene that they did not
that
have.
they cut.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a disconnect in that, just a bit of discontinuity.
But for you lovely people who love physical media, you can buy the Blu-ray box set, and guess what?
It's there.
It's there. There you go.
Which I do have. Okay, next one is Rise of the Planet of the Apes in 2011, and its two sequels also chronicle the fall of humanity just as Conquest did, in a new continuity. And shared plot points include an ape named Caesar being raised by human man, his rise as leader and instigator of the revolution, and his more evolved than other primates in the near future setting.
That is true.
Yeah, which one thing I really liked about that Rise of the Planet of the Apes was they showed how the disease that wiped out humanity, or a great portion of humanity,
Yes,
took off from that one pilot guy, the Turk pilot.
The end credits will literally show you how it spread across the world.
Yes.
Yes, I did love that, and I love that aspect. A lot of you people who are not Franco fans, but love the idea of the Apes movies, go watch that film. It's very interesting, and you could feel the humanity within it based upon a CG ape, as it were, because there is no person that's playing the actual ape itself directly. Unless you,
well, no, they did mocap.
They did mocap, but was it Andy Serkis?
It was Andy Serkis.
Okay,
Andy Serkis is such a freaking wonderful mocap guy.
Yes, well, he was Kong.
And he was Gollum. Yes. I mean, that he should, when it comes time, he should get a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Well, he needs a Lifetime Achievement Awards. I love him. I love him as an actor as well. Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and take the next one.
Next one, the majority of the outdoor scenes were shot in and around the University of California Irvine campus, which was designed by futuristic architect William L. Pereira and was only 6 years old at the time of the filming. Much of the production centered around the social science complex, which was designed by A.C. Martin and Associates and was still under construction during filming. Careful use of camera angles and editing made a handful of buildings and exteriors feel more like action spread across an entire city.
And finally, I got one more point after this one. It's like early screenings of the movie showed more graphic scenes as previously referenced, but the scenes were reworked and new audio dubbed, even though they had no budget to do so.
Yeah, because they ran out of budget after a certain point. They were killing the apes at this point. The series, they were trying to lower the budgets even more, and we'll talk about that in further Apes movies because you get to see more masks.
Yes, this one, because the what we would call the hero makeup would be for like a Caesar and like Caesar and his mate, and a few others were just at least the ones closer in. That and I like they did say that the use of the jumpsuits was good because they didn't have to have full body makeup.
They didn't have to do the fur and everything else. They just put a suit on them and then put like gloves, mask, and feet, and that was it. And that was it. It's kind of like The Walking Dead too, because towards the end they would actually do enough distance shots.
Well, because you don't need to be made up very very well if you're in a distance shot.
Exactly. And it was only people in the forefront and people who were her, like for Apes, it was hero apes, or with Walking Dead, it was hero zombies at that point.
Yeah. And I do have to mention when they had J. Lee Thompson as the director. Okay. J. Lee Thompson did movies like Guns and Navarone and Cape Fear. And he was skilled with using, getting the most bang for the buck, as it were. So that's why, and they'd want him to use Arthur Jacobs wanted to use him for other movies, but he had scheduling conflicts at the time, so he was not able to direct like the first movie.
Ah, interesting.
So he did a conquest and battle. So, okay. And let's see here. I think that does it for that. And then we're going to move to our favorite quotes.
Well, I already put out my favorite quote already. That was
Mhm.
"lousy human bastards," which you actually mentioned. I'll post the one other that I have, and that's all I have after that. Caesar saying, "Why did you turn us from pets into slaves?" And that was from that one person that I cannot recall. I
Was it the
forget his-
governor?
I believe so. He said, "Because your kind was once our ancestors.
Mhm.
Man was born of the ape. It's still curled up within inside every man. The beast must be whipped into submission. The savage should be shackled and chained. You are the beast, Caesar. You poisoned our guts. We hated the dark side of ourselves." That's all I got.
Yeah, that sounds vaguely dictatorish.
It
It's
is.
like
It
poison the
is.
blood.
Yep.
Okay, I have a couple with Armando and Caesar, and he's talking about you must not speak because the one line I pulled from this one is the mere fact of your existence would be regarded as a great threat to mankind, and it was treated as such.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay, and then I have Caesar and Armando. They as they're standing in front of the memorial to the dogs and the cats. This is they all died within a few months, 8 years ago.
Mhm.
And every dog and cat in the world, and it was like a plague. The disease that killed them was a mysterious virus brought back from outer space by one of the astronauts. Which astronaut they don't really refer to.
Yeah, it's weird because
Mhm.
it could have been Zira and
Cornelius.
Cornelius or their third associate that too as well. Who knows?
Yeah.
And or it could have been a human
Mm-hmm.
for all we know.
And so, and they asked us, like, well, didn't it affect humans? It says, no, humans were immune. And so it was discovered we're simian, and simians were also immune,
Yeah.
and even the smallest ones. And that's how it all began. Humans wanting little household pets to replace the ones they had lost. Then people realized how quick they were to eat, how quick they were to learn, how easy to train. The pets became larger and larger until now. And to this, Caesar replies, it's monstrous. And Armando has his rejoinder reading, now you understand why I've kept you away.
I'm starting to think, does this segue into like robotics?
Possibly.
Think about it. You know, it's kind of fictitious way back when, but how are we perceiving using computers and everything else nowadays? And we got robots and things that are menial that are doing our vacuuming, turning, creating food for us, things of that nature. And we got the
exactly.
Tesla robot.
Yeah, we also have the was it the dancing automaton robots? I don't know if you've ever seen those.
Yeah, eventually that it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, and the one thing I really like, no, well, not really like, but one thing that I can see as a as a loose parallel would be, I do not mind the use of a robot where it's very hazardous for a human to be. Because it would be like
almost like toxic waste and things of that nature.
Things like that, things of that nature, or if it's like really, like kind of like a environmental hazard, like a gas cloud, something like something of that nature.
Yeah.
Or other type of work that would be if because I like to see it as a robot can weld very easily, very quickly,
and precisely.
And if it has to be repeated, humans kind of like don't have that skill to be repeatedly doing. If it's a simple weld, fine, straight line. But if it's like welding that you have to make it adaptations for, a human is much better for that purpose.
That is true. Yeah.
Because humans can anticipate, robots, so far as I know, can't yet.
Well, honestly, I've always said it, and I said it years ago, we're going to be a victim of our own creations. And you could coin me on that phrase, everybody.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Okay. So we have our final, I have our final quote, and this is where we have Caesar's final monologue, and this is after a back and forth with McDonald. And Caesar says, "Where there is fire, there is smoke, and in that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall, the day when he finally and self-destructively turns his weapons against his own kind." Yeah.
Which they do in the end.
Which they do in the end.
We already saw it because that was the last movie. Remember, everybody with they peeled their faces off and they had the nuclear bomb, and both the apes and the humans that were mutants destroyed the world. What year was that?
Oh, it was after Apes, so
3000s,
something like that. I can't remember exactly. It was in the 3000s.
It was so far advanced in the future at that point. But how a nuclear, missile still lived, I don't know.
Yeah, well, metal has a very long lifespan.
It does,
unless it rusts. So.
Well, then there's also degradation based upon radiation, and you know this better than I do, Jerry.
Yeah, me being an engineer and all. So.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so let's move on to our ratings between 1 and 10.
For an Apes movie, I have to give this definitely a 9.75 because I can't go beyond the 10. But I gave a 10 to the original Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I think so did I. But on this one, because of there's some little bit of plot holes here and there and some other issues, again, it's not a perfect movie, but I still like my second favorite. I gave it like an 8.5.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I looked at the doc and it's like, I don't remember writing 7.5. It's just typo.
But honestly, listeners, you guys know we haven't done ratings in a long time for specific movies, but Jerry and I still continue this, and it's fun. But I had to put it on a standpoint of Apes movies, so that way it's like, where do you rate it in the series? And obviously, 10 being the original, and then going down, this would be my second favorite movie. So you could guess what my third favorite movie is. Keep going, and you could chat about that or ask me in the comments. Yeah. We're at that point of any additional thoughts, I guess.
No, I think it's worth a rewatch if you haven't watched it in a while. And if you haven't seen it at all, I don't know. For one thing, I don't know why you're listening to this if you haven't seen it.
I'm sure they have.
Yes.
Or they're inquiring because they are Xennials and they don't have a clue. But they're going to listen to it and go, oh, wow, it has a political narrative to it. Go ahead. Social commentaries are very much a point in 70s films, and this is definitely a 70s film that gave a social commentary. I only have one additional thought that I have that I did not really comment on, and Jerry, you'll get a laugh at this one. This movie came out in 72, right? So during that time, we had within the 60s and the 70s, there was that transitional period of like filmmaking and everything else. Did you notice the scenery within the compound of where they were holding the apes and everything else when they were filming? Like there was like a silo, there was a tube of a hallway. It had lights down the sides of it. They had a lot of these computers on the sides. It looked very reminiscent of Star Wars and Star Trek altogether.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't go further into this. I didn't really research it, everybody, but I'm pretty sure that they probably utilized certain sets that were being utilized during that time within specific space movies or space operas at that time.
Yeah.
Most poignantly would be Star Trek or past Star Trek shows.
Yeah, and one thing, I got 2 points on this, and I did look a little bit into this when I was watching it on Amazon.
Okay.
Is that there was some recycling of like all the computer work. I think some of it was used for the time tunnel.
Yes.
Yeah, all the analog stuff. And this is my whole thing about it's the future, but granted it's not like the 300 years, in the future.
Yeah.
It's only 20 years. So I can, like when you're that far ahead, like 20 years, analog stuff still seems okay. But when you're 300 years ahead, analog is
Antiquated.
antiquated. Because, there should, because even with, because when did touchscreen start to become around? About 2000? More or less? Maybe around there?
2006, 2008,
Mm-hmm.
depending on commercial based and within government based stuff. As far as for everybody commercially, like for us for consumerism,
Yeah.
we didn't start to see that until like into the 2010s, little into it because we got iPhones and everything else like that, iPod touches. And then it started to excel and move on and further into that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one, I don't know if you have I know you as a musician have an ear for things, but there was a point where I was hearing some sounds, like some repeated sounds. And if you go back and listen to it, it's when Caesar's in the control center. If you listen real close, there's like a buzzing sound or like a
yes.
Yeah, but it was not a buzz, but like a
humming
sound.
Yeah,
that humming sound was the sounded like phasers from the old Star Trek show.
Yes, it does.
Did you know?
It's
reused.
That? It's reused effects. It's
Yeah.
reused effects that they utilize, and it was a constant thing that they always did in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, reuse,
and there's no copyright on it back then too. By the way, so they just like, you guys need to use this for your film. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and that's the whole thing about like we've mentioned it before with like King Kong had reused sets from like some Egyptian movies. It's some movie set in Egypt, and it's like, here, reuse this portion because all you need is that one little window that fits in your camera view.
Correct.
You don't need anything outside of it, which it really baffles people. Is like when they see something on a set, if they actually visit a set or see some making of it, it's like, well, you only saw this portion, and we're talking the old school way of doing things. So because all you see is what's in your camera frame, and that's all you need to see.
That's literally what it is. It's all POV, POV of the actor of what's going on. Everything else is, we'll just throw that in post.
Yeah. And one thing, and this came to light, when I was, I was in school, at university, and I tried out for the college version of Jeopardy. So I had to drive down to Culver City, and we actually sat in the studio.
Oh, wow.
And that Jeopardy set is far smaller than you think it is.
Oh, trust me. I know that feeling. I've worked in many studio sets in Manhattan. Regis and Kelly would be the one that I've went to the most. I think I went there a few times with my teacher, and I worked there a couple of times. And honestly, you come in the door from outside, it's the main hallway, and then there's a sliding door that goes right into the studio, and the studio is just very small.
Yeah.
And then beyond that is the newsroom. And that was the old studio, everybody. It's changed since then. But when I tell you about the audio and the video studio section that's on the second floor, that's different. It's like, whoa, where did this place come from? How many people are in charge of this? Oh, wow, we got 15 people in here, all at different desks doing everything and multiple monitors. And multiple people with headphones too. It's so it's a wild ride. My mother actually got to experience that during the pandemic when they went to a filming of like a local show. I forget who it was, but it was funny because my sister's got her tickets. He goes, I didn't realize how small the sets were. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sorry to go back to when you mentioned COVID just now, is that I remember seeing that. Remember watching Planet of the Apes during lockdown, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and we are talking about they showed how it progressed after the pilot of San Francisco,
Yeah.
And then did you see all these other lines spreading out with flights and stuff? And it's like,
Yeah.
that's how it happens. But see, now with air travel can cause a lot of stuff to spread rapidly, like we saw.
Mm-hmm.
And if you thought in that kind of like related back to the Spanish flu,
Mm-hmm.
and it was taken over to Europe, at least from my understanding, is that because it was first spotted in the United States in, I think it was Kansas, and as soldiers were going over to fight in the First World War, took that over to Europe, and that was like cited at, I think, if I forget which channel I saw it on, I think it was Weird History on YouTube, and it was cited as like one of the things that helped bring about Germany's defeat in the First World War. It was like
Oh,
one of the
wow.
factors, because it fatigued their troops to the point that they couldn't fight, and it was like tipped it over, like that tipped that balance over to the Ally side.
Interesting. Cool. They actually did something like that with the AIDS virus years and years and years ago, back into late 80s, early 90s. It's not something that's very much known, but they were able to trace things back to where it originated to some degree, and to know exactly how it was able to be spread at certain points. Now we're at an age where things are able to be fixed and people are are able to be taken care of, which is great.
Yeah. Okay, but that's it for me on this.
All right. Well, with that, we didn't get any feedback. I think I mentioned it at one point on social media at one point, but we didn't get anything. But for you guys to send in your feedback, well, to submit your feedback is very simple. All you have to do is follow us on Facebook, which would be facebook.com, Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. All you have to do is go there, subscribe, or just follow us, and then we'll leave an image. Or even if we leave an image of something that's most recently, all you have to do is say, hey, I listened to your episode of this particular movie, and these are my thoughts. We'll mention it on the next episode that we cover. You could email us. And by the way, yeah, Facebook is Instagram as well. So what's on Facebook goes on Instagram as well. So we could do that. So if you leave a comment in either or, I'll get them and we'll post them, and then we'll read them on the next episode. You could send us an email, and all you have to do is send a drafted email written at adrenalinecinema.podcast@gmail.com. And just let us know your thoughts and what you liked about this particular episode or any other episode, and we'll discuss it. Or if you feel the need and you feel you have to have your voice heard, all you have to do is record yourself. We have all these cool, nifty devices now that we can record yourself and send it as an attachment. I can play it on the podcast, and it's as if you're on the podcast as well. So we could be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, TuneIn, Deezer, or whatever podcast player of choice. So obviously with Apple Podcasts and Spotify, there's a rating or review. You could do that. Please do so. 5 stars are mostly appreciated. Whatever you could do, be greatly appreciated. Just give us a rating. That's all it is. But, well, here's a section that I always ponder, but I'm always on, but Jerry is not. But where else can listeners hear you, Jerry?
You can hear me as I am one of the 4 co-hosts of the Buffalo podcast. And you can hear that on everywhere I think you can get Adrenaline on. And we've been doing that since last July, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we're coming up on 1 year already.
Awesome.
I mean, it is, some fun puns, some fun games, some good discussion. Take a listen, and I love doing it.
Yeah, and as always, you could hear Jerry here on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. We have a lot of stuff in our back catalog that you could actually listen to. And then for anything upcoming that Jerry and I, or Jerry and other people do. And just check back here on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, as always. You could hear me here, as always, as well, on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. Next up will be our coverage about Rad from 1986. Rad Racing, everybody. My friend Rob and I Rob Moore. We're going to be covering that particular movie, and you could hear that probably within the next month or two. And then you could hear me on Panels to the Pixels podcast as well. We covered and wrapped up Daredevil Born Again, but we're revving up to do the Thunderbolts movie that's going to be coming out soon. So check back with us. I'll probably be myself, Rob Moda, whoever wants to join us at that point, probably Becky. But just to give a little bit more information out there, because Pirate Core Entertainment Podcast has been doing a lot of stuff. I've been doing the Pirate Core Music Podcast, and Rima Joe, she's on Strange Indeed on Podcastica. To give a little shout out to Podcastica, she and I covered Guns N' Roses recently, so that was the second episode. You could hear myself and Rob Murr cover the legacy of Iron Maiden, which would be 50 years. Because we're coming up on 50 years of Iron Maiden.
Wow.
So
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yep. That one band has been around for 50 years.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. I love it.
So we're going to be covering that. You could hear Becky and Mandy as they cover everything on what's on tonight with the Pit, and they covered up that coverage of the season 1, and check that out as well. They have a lot more interviews coming to you, everybody, so check that out. Mandy's podcast, Dinner with Her, so check that out as well. And that's a all women's podcast, everybody. So it's women talking about women in history, and then doing a lovely dinner or dish from that time and tasting it. So it's really an interesting listening to those particular podcasts, as well as giving more love to Podcastica. Please check out podcastica.com. With that, you're going to be getting a lot more stuff. Run for Your Lives. I'll be on there on a future podcast. But Daphne and Paker are doing a lot of stuff that's going on recently. Check them out. You can also hear The Cast of Us. So those of you who are fans of The Last of Us, check out The Cast of Us on podcastica.com. And as well as everything else that's on there. Buffalo, I'm not sure, is on podcastica.com. Is that correct, Jerry? Or is it?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I maybe not, but I know it's everywhere, like on Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
I'm not sure if it's an association, but
yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember.
I can't vouch for it myself, but check it out. Buffalo, and as well as Wilhelm. So Mr. Ben Beck himself will be back with the Wilhelm podcast. So he's going to be putting out more content out there. He's revving up. He's got his new website. Check it out, wilhelm.com. And on top of that, just check out the Wilhelm podcast. And you can find that on all Players of Choice. With that, all I could ask you guys to do is please check out the Pirate Core Entertainment website, which would be piratecoreentertainment.com. Don't put www. Trust me. Just put piratecoreentertainment.com. And that's Pirate Core, and core is spelled C-O-R-P-S, like corporation. Anyhow, check that out. We are still under construction. I'll be working on that within the next 2 months. Actually, I had to take a few classes recently, so I'll be fixing that up soon. Anyhow, that is our episode. I just want to thank everyone for listening. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jerry.
This was Adrenaline Cinema Podcast. And we'll catch you guys on the next reel.
Bye.
Goodbye.